All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am Taylor Jackson, Head of Strategic Growth at Red Pepper, and I think it's time. Let's go ahead and get started here. So, um, again, we want to welcome everyone who's joined us. This is going to be the first in a series of three webinars. Today's topic is Listen Like a Pro, and specifically want to focus on how to elevate your feedback that you might be capturing with AI. But this whole series is really dedicated to how you can extrapolate and get more value out of your Qualtrics instance, your customer experience listening program. And so we're going to focus on the three main pillars that we talk about with Qualtrics. So starting today with Listen, our next webinar series will be Analyze with Confidence, turning raw data into AI-driven insights. And then we'll wrap up the series with Act for Impact. So obviously the data that we get is only as good as the action that we take with it, and really kind of make good value and purpose of that data. So the good news is if you're registered for the webinar today, you're automatically registered for the following two webinars. So keep an eye out for the calendar invite coming through with a Zoom link and information. And we'll make that nice and easy for you. As you can see, the second one will happen on September 9th. The third one will happen on October 1st. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. So just a little bit about us as Red Pepper and why we're here and participating in this webinar with Qualtrics. I think just to start out, we are a platinum consulting partner with Qualtrics. So that is the highest partner tier in the ecosystem. We've been working together with Qualtrics for over 9 years at this point. In that time, we've helped over 4,300 organizations with their various program needs. And we take the commitment and partnership very seriously. So we average a little bit over a 4.7 in terms of customer satisfaction score. A little bit of additional detail on us. We're a full service experience management consultancy. And what that means is we can really lean in and help support you in your experience management programs in three core areas. So the first being we've got Qualtrics experts. So these are going to be your technical consultants that are helping you stand up or run the day-to-day aspects of your Qualtrics program. We've got industry advisors. So these are the folks that have subject matter expertise. They can lean in for more of the strategy, kind of big picture design, making sure we're asking the right questions, for example, at the right time to get great feedback and data out of that. We have a high level of expertise in AI. That's part of why we've partnered with Qualtrics on this series, where we are going to highlight some of the capabilities and also kind of things to watch out for from an AI perspective. And then finally, we have a custom engineering team that can help, kind of bring to life some custom needs that some organizations might have. So ultimately, this means we can kind of flex and adapt to meet you where you're at with your program, get you the right level of support, and ultimately make sure that you're getting that return on investment, that you're seeing meaningful impact from your customer experience programs. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. So today, just in terms of setting the agenda, we're going to be talking about some of the survey challenges that you might face. So really kind of focusing in on, are we designing the survey to really capture meaningful insights? You'll hear the term that the data is only as good, the data you get out is only as good as the data you put in. So we want to make sure things are structured correctly. So we're going to start out with those survey challenges, making sure that we're kind of keeping an eye out on that. And that's going to be led by Alicia Caballero. And then we're going to introduce this customer example. And this is a customer that it's a fictitious customer, but it's based on real experience and results called Blue River Trail Gear. You're going to hear us talk about them throughout the whole series. So our objective here is we really want to bring to life what the tactical stuff we talk about, what it looks like in application, how it might actually result in business impact, and kind of help bring things to life. So Alicia's going to go ahead and narrate, kind of through that case study, help bring things to life. Then we're going to kick things over to Preston Donahue. He is our team lead. He manages our implementation team. So these are the folks that have that high degree of Qualtrics expertise. He's going to lead a live demo where you'll be able to kind of see some of the investment Qualtrics has made in that AI functionality. Then we're going to go ahead and kick it back over to Alicia. We're going to look at kind of by making those survey improvements and impact, how that might help an organization. Again, this is going to be that Blue River Trail Gear guide. Then we're going to open things up for a Q&A. So as we go throughout the session today, please feel free to include any questions that you might have. We just ask that you use the Q&A functionality that you can find down at the bottom of the webinar. Enter in those questions, and again, we'll make sure to get to those, but please use the Q&A instead of chat functionality. So with that, we're really excited to go ahead and get things started, and Alicia, I'll kick it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Taylor, and hi, everyone. As Taylor mentioned, I'm going to be talking a little bit today about how we can leverage some AI features within Qualtrics to address some survey challenges that we might be facing. As we all know, there are many ways out there to leverage AI to enhance your surveys, both inside of Qualtrics and outside of Qualtrics. Today, we have a few specific use cases that we're going to zoom in and think about. And in general, the situation that they're all going to be related to is something we're all living and breathing, and that is that our industry is moving away from these long form surveys to these shorter, just a few question surveys where there's typically one outcome variable like CSAT or NPS, asking about the customer satisfaction or that net promoter score. And then we're using a couple open ends to add color, which from a respondent perspective is fabulous, right? Because it's quick and it's easy for me. I'm able to tell you exactly what I want quickly and move on with my life. However, for us practitioners, sometimes it can leave us with boatloads of text that somehow we have to manipulate into meaningful, actionable insights that can drive our business in the ways we want. And the solutions we're going to be talking about today are examples that can all address that. So the first one that we're going to be talking about will be shallow responses. So this is when someone says good or bad, and we're like, all right, tell me a little bit more. And this tool is called the Qualtrics Response Clarity. So in addition to the very short answers, if it is very general, like for example, rude associate, it might probe and remind you, hey, can you add a little bit more context about what's going on? And this enables more actionability, whether it's tying it closed loop or just being able to understand themes over time. The second problem we run into a lot with this use case of, one outcome variable and a few open ends is vague or ambiguous wording. So sometimes people may say, I had a really frustrating experience. But what can I do with that, right? What was frustrating about it? Which part of the experience? And this solution, called the Qualtrics Conversational Feedback, that uses AI to create follow-up questions that are conversational in nature. So like that last example where I said, rude team member, it's going to come back and ask me, hey, tell me more about that. Like, how were they rude? And I'll keep digging until it has like a full, thorough response. And the third one is feedback that's not driving action. So the example here is, let's say I took the survey and I was very frustrated and I wrote a long, detailed response specifying exactly my anger and what caused it. Sometimes it just sits there until you review the data for your quarterly analysis and an opportunity has passed by to try to mend that relationship with the customer. So this tool, what it does is it's analyzing the text. It can understand both the sentiment plus the urgency. So it would pick up on, hey, Alicia's mad. And also this is something that is time sensitive that we could fix quickly. So what this tool does after it understands the sentiment and urgency, it leads, you can set up some closed loop automation. So it may route to the store manager if it was a team member issue. It may route to customer service if it is a issue that they need to resolve. All right, next slide, please. All right, our example that we'll be using today for our fictional customer case study is called Blue River. And Blue River is a fast growing outdoor retailer. So they have an online presence as well as a physical retail presence. You know, the things you're going to be buying here, like the picture, right? Maybe some fishing poles, maybe some camping gear, that type of stuff. And when people are buying in these categories, they're buying because they need stuff to get out there and go have more fun. So if we screw up the process, we are standing between them and fun. And customers are going to be pretty critical about wanting to get those issues resolved. They're not going to give you a lot of chances if you mess it up. So I want to walk you through an example of how some of the features we were just talking about can come to life. So here's a real example that happens in retail all the time. A family is excited for their upcoming trip. They're going to go camping and they need some more gear, right? They need a tent, maybe some flashlights, right? There's a variety of things that they need to pick up. So they check online first because they want to see, you know, what kind of deals there are, what stores nearby have the things they want in stock, etc. Most of what they want is showing as available at the closest Blue River store, including the tent that they wanted. There's a specific brand and size that they wanted to get, and they had a preferred color. So pack up the family into the car, head over to the store to pick it all up. The expectation is they are picturing themselves buying everything they need today, as well as the tent, so they can cross that off their to-do list and move on to having fun. And then we have the letdown, right? I come into the store, I go to the aisle where it's supposed to be, it's not there. I reach out to an in-store associate and they're like, let me see if I can call someone, right? We've all been in this scenario after 10 minutes of looking in the back and walkie-talkie and this, that, and the other. We don't have it. Maybe you can order it online. So that's the letdown. And then it makes us frustrated because we've now tried several approaches to complete our job and we're not able to meet our need of getting that tent. So what's the impact? We end up leaving the store without getting what we want and we're disappointed. And now we kind of have that lingering voice in the back of our head that I can't really trust Blue River's website, that in times where it's important to me to get what I need today, I'm not really going to probably trust them next time. All right, next slide. So Blue River has a current survey in place that goes out to customers that shop in their stores and online. And, you know, putting ourselves now in the shoes of the insight team that works at Blue River, you know, they get an email, hey, come in and present to us about what's going on in our organization. Sales are down. What are some areas we can improve in? So, you know, they see out of stock kind of as a theme within their open ends, but they're not really exactly sure what to do with it, right? Like we know that they're feeling frustrated, but about precisely what, you know, there's a lot of questions around what items, what kind of issue it truly was. And so this is an example where they're going to need to listen better. Next slide, please. I wanted to peel this apart a little bit further and to really drive the point home around how vague feedback simply does not drive action. And as we're moving as an industry into these shorter surveys, what I've seen is we move there and kind of sometimes fails, and then we got to go back to the beginning and our programs are changing and it just messes things up. I'm sure many of you have been there as well. So one thing we can do to make our surveys better and drive more action in our organizations is improve or minimize that vague feedback. So I wanted to go a little bit further into this out of stock example, because maybe on the previous slide you were like, I can do action on that. But when we're thinking about retail, right, out of stock could be an inventory issue, which again could be, is it sold out? Is it they can't find it? Is it poor signage? Is it misplaced? Um, is an assortment issue, right? Wrong size, wrong color, wrong variant, and then execution. Hey, is it just we need to do some training to our in-store associates and ensure that they truly know where everything is in the stores, including what feature merchandise has been moved around, etc. Next slide, please. All right, we are going to transition to Preston, and he's going to hop into Qualtrics and show you live how this can come to life.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share here, and let's dive into the platform to look at the survey that's currently configured and look at how we can up the level of the survey to listen better, to gather better data so that we can make better decisions. Great. Okay, hopefully everyone can kind of see my Qualtrics screen here. So let's start off with the first part. There's nothing worse than sending out a survey and seeing comments come back saying the survey didn't work right or that things were set up incorrectly. So the first kind of tool I want to look at as, the key to make sure that things are working properly in the survey itself is this expert review score feature. Now, this has been a feature that has existed for a little while in Qualtrics, but this is a great place to check for simple misses that you might have made in the survey, or making sure that the requirements of your survey match what you need them to be, specifically around WCAG compliance, things like that it can track. So making sure that your display logic is set up correctly, or it follows the right methodology. So there are different issues that Qualtrics can find in your survey that you can refer to understand, well, based on the design of this survey, we'll put that one to the side, but there's survey errors, there's methodology errors. The survey might be too long. We might be asking too many open-ended questions. There might be too many matrix tables from a compliance, WCAG compliance, those types of things. Fraudulent responses, things to be aware of, and embedded data, things that might be incorrectly set up from a metadata standpoint on your survey. So once everything looks good there, let's take a look at the survey. So we have our introduction to our survey, thanking the respondent for taking the time. We have our CSAT survey, our general satisfaction question. We're really interested in understanding what it looked like for the customers, and were they able to purchase all the items that they were looking for when they go to the store or the website. And then the open-ended question of tell us more about that experience as they were shopping and finding those products at the site. Okay, so very simple, very quick, designed around best practices for simplistic questions that are targeted to our KPIs and our outcomes we're trying to measure here. But let's take a look at what this data might look like on the back end. So let's kind of preview this survey and take it as we've all seen very standard responses come in for these open-ended questions. So I'm going to go to the next page here. In our experience, I was somewhat dissatisfied with the fact that I looked online, saw that this tent was supposed to be available at the store and it wasn't. So I'm slightly dissatisfied here. No, I was not able to purchase all the things that I went to the store to find. And, my open-ended comment was tent not in stock. Okay. And continue. Great. Now on the back end, looking at the raw data, how insightful is tent not in stock? Great, I know the tent was not in stock at that location that they went to, but what action can I actually drive by just knowing that a tent was out of stock? Not too much, okay? Let's push Qualtrics a little bit more to get some better data here. The first thing we're gonna look at is something called response clarity, a newer AI feature released in Qualtrics. But when enabled on a text entry question, it analyzes the respondent's answer using AI and prompts them to give a fuller response if their answer is too vague or if the answer only partially answers the question and doesn't fully answer the question. A prompt will appear when the respondent clicks the next button to continue to the next page of the survey. So where this is found is under the validation. So there are different types of validation. The default one for open-ended responses or text entry responses now defaults to response clarity. This response clarity is what we're looking for here. So there's options to customize this. There are default prompts for all of the different things that the AI will catch. If it's a partial answer, there's certain prompts. If it's too general, there are certain prompts. So there's a variation of a few different prompts Qualtrics has. Now you can, if you have specific prompts that you'd like to add instead of using default prompts, you can create your custom prompts for each of these specific categories that the prompts exist for. Okay, so let's take a look at our survey now. Now after adding this response clarity, let's see what better data that we can get. Let's go ahead and preview our survey again. Let's take it the same way. I'm dissatisfied. No, I was not able to find everything I was looking for. Tent not in stock. And it's going to pop up with a prompt here to say, hey, can you provide more detail about your answer or give an example? Okay, so it's eliciting more data. It found that it wasn't very insightful, so it's asking me to give like a specific example here. So let's say I now add some additional text to this. And I say, I found most everything else, but I could not find the tent I needed for my trip tomorrow. Okay, great. That's kind of the next level up. Now we understand, a specific thing that might have been out of stock. So now we can actually look at inventory to understand, are there inventory problems in this certain department within this location or on our website? So this gives us a little bit more actionable data to really pinpoint the reason here. But we can push Qualtrics even farther than that. So let's look at conversational feedback now. So conversational feedback, again, another kind of AI listening tool, is artificial intelligence to create follow-up questions. So instead of a prompt, it's an additional follow-up question based on what respondents put in to the text entry. Okay, it works best when asking very specific, detailed questions in the survey. For example, the question, how was your experience at Qualtrics.com or at blueriver.com or at your local Blue River store will get you much better follow-up questions than asking, tell us more, or something, a more vague, wide open question. Okay, so let's turn this on. Again, very simple to turn this on. If I click on include follow-up questions here, it has us add our company name if we want the company name to possibly be added into the follow-up question. And we can also add topics to avoid. We'll get a little bit more into this topic aspect, but we can say, are there any topics of responses that might come in or be categorized under a certain topic that we don't want to include follow-up answers for? Maybe pricing, everyone wants lower price, but it may be some topic that we say, if there's a question that details about this topic, then don't ask a follow-up question for it. Okay. Now there is a max number of follow-up questions that we can ask is 2. So we can tell it to keep drilling in until it gets as best as response as possible. So I'm going to confirm with these settings in place. Now let's take a look at our survey and see what it does. Let's preview. dissatisfied. No, I was not able to find everything. And let's go tent not in stock. So paired with the first section of response clarity, we're still seeing that, great, the first question, let's still try and get a little bit more data out of them. So let's go ahead and add what I had added previously in addition. So found most everything, but I didn't find the tent that I needed. And when I go to next page, the AI is running and it prompts an additional question to get some more clarification. So I can say, we understand you were unable to find the tent that you needed. Could you share more specific features or specifications of the tent you were looking for? So now I can get even more granular to understand, yeah, well, maybe I'll give a few specifics of the type of tent that I was looking for. I was looking for a climate backpacking tent, so something more specific. And now I can kind of send this to product. I can send this to the planners at the location or the store managers to understand, what does ordering look like? What are trends of sales look like for this? Obviously, we didn't sell this because it wasn't in stock. Things like that we can actually start looking at now. Okay, great. Now, we're listening better. We have some better open-ended responses, but we can take this a bit further from an action standpoint. Okay. Let's look at something called text sentiment topic found within the survey flow. So the survey flow is a routing of how someone navigates through your survey. So it starts at the top and moves its way down through the flow. After I ask all of my questions in my survey, I want Qualtrics to run some text sentiment analysis on that open-ended question that I asked and start tagging a few things. Now, as respondents provide that feedback, Qualtrics can assess this and assign sentiment, can assign topics to those responses. And once those calculations are made, you can use logic. So these become variables that you can use in logic for creating different paths in the survey, asking different follow-up questions to really understand the specifics of, the drivers of, what their frustration was specific around a comment of a product being out of stock or an experience with the assistants and staff interaction that they may have had at the actual store. You can also trigger immediate follow-up to the customer with specifics on, hey, I understand based on your comment, the negative sentiment around a product being out of stock, and providing a way to follow up with that customer and really close the loop through Qualtrics ticketing that can be routed dynamically to the right departments. Okay. So if I scroll down here, we can see that I've created a couple of some generic topics here: out of stock, assistance, and staff interaction with queries. For those that are familiar with Text IQ, you build the queries the same way. So it's looking for any comments that are using the word looking for or find. I'm assigning sentiment labels of very frustrated from their comment, other than just their satisfaction metric. I can look at their actual comment. It is common that I still find that even though someone might have been satisfied, not very satisfied, but maybe even neutral, they may have had like a recommendation or a suggestion or a negative comment associated. Okay, so looking at these things, we can create new variables to understand, did the comment get tagged under something being out of stock? What was the overall sentiment of the comment specific to the product being out of stock? Now you can see here, for demonstration purposes, I added a different branch, but I have a couple new follow-up questions that I want to add that are going to target these different topics that we're looking at. So let's look at these questions really quick. If I scroll down here, these are my new questions. So what I'm looking and asking for is if a comment comes in and the AI found and Qualtrics found that their comment was associated to products being out of stock, I want to know, more specific, some actionable things I can do based on it being out of stock. So to Alicia's point earlier, there's options on the product said it was in stock online, but no one could find it. The employees couldn't locate it. Or maybe they just said, you know, they had different color than I wanted, or the item was just completely sold out. And then based on the assistants and staff interaction, different options on what their experience was with the associate at the store or location. So let's now take the survey and understand, you know, full end to end how we can get this with better data. So let's preview the survey and let's run through it again here. Say dissatisfied, no. And I'm just going to give a full response. So if someone does give a very thoughtful, full response, there are some instances where it might skip the initial prompt. So if I just went to say tent not in stock, I found most everything, great. It's going to skip that initial prompt because there was enough context there. Now it's asking me my specific question, specifications of the tent. And now it's saying what best describes your situation. And I can say the product was in stock online, but I couldn't find it, and the employees couldn't locate it. Okay. And now I have a very actionable piece of data that can be routed, you know, showing that in the workflow in Qualtrics. If I go into the workflow section of Qualtrics, I can now look at this different text sentiment, even to the point of various conditions that now be available to me from that open-ended question. So actionability, the topic, the sentiment, the effort involved, the emotion. So there are different emotions involved to say, well, if the emotion was anger or confusion, then trigger a ticket to be created for someone to follow up. In this, I have an actionability set to response needed. So if the AI indicates that, hey, this response requires someone to follow up with them, then create a ticket. It can be routed to the branch. It can be routed to the location. It can be routed based on different metadata fields associated. In an earlier example I gave, there's also the ability to say, well, anytime a comment comes in that's providing a suggestion, route that to X team as suggestions from the customers. All clients ask, well, what do we do with this data? I need to get this data to this other team so to know like what people are saying. This is a very real-time way of getting that data to where it needs to go without always the need of logging into Qualtrics and kind of interpreting the dashboards on your own. This is a great way that expands a bunch of different possibilities with closed loop feedback and really listening to your customers. Great. Kind of turn back the time over to you, Taylor.
Great. Yeah, and I think we're actually going to go over to Alicia, and she's going to kind of tie this back together into kind of our fictitious company and talk about how they might utilize these tools to start becoming a little more, capable, a little more action oriented, and leverage kind of these new capabilities to enhance their program.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Preston. That live demo was excellent. So let's just wrap up again what just happened, right? What did we do? What did we change, and what was the actual impact? So first of all, the old was a vague open end, and we improved it to expand on the short answers, clarify vague, and detect the sentiment and urgency. So let's talk about the impact. So previously, if they only said out of stock, the AI would prompt richer details. Previously, we couldn't tell why being out of stock was the issue, right? Specifically, what was driving that. Now it will classify into root causes, sold out, signage, etc. Previously, we didn't really have clear action. This was stuck in reporting or dashboards. And now the urgent cases have been routed in real time and can lead to better results. On the right-hand side, we just kind of show this paradigm of listen, analyze, act. These AI features really do enable you to go just from that listening to being able to analyze those open ends better, which ultimately will lead to more action. All right, I think this might go now back to Taylor. Or no, we're at question and answer.
So we've had a few questions come in, so let's get into the Q&A. If you have questions and you have not yet submitted those, please do so through the Q&A feature, and we will make sure to get to any questions that you have.
Yeah.
So,
I
sorry,
did.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I can start going through the ones from the demo perspective, Taylor, and
Sure.
start answering if I can go down the list here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Yeah, Charles asked a great question. Kind of note it from the standpoint of the prompt. It's similar to request response. So if you've ever used request response in a survey, if they don't want to elaborate, if they don't want to add more text, they just click the next button and it lets them proceed through the survey without needing to provide additional context. Yeah, great question. Yeah. So some of these AI features are not available on all Qualtrics licenses. There are some new SKUs that Qualtrics has released. So if you don't have it as part of your license or you don't see it, there's two ways to check for it. One, there are some permissions, and we could follow up with this, but there are some permissions on the users where you need to allow the AI features to be enabled. If that is turned on, but you still don't see them, then it would be a conversation that we would love to have with you and your Qualtrics account executive to understand what it would look like to now receive some of these AI features in your Qualtrics license. Okay, reading through a few more, so yeah, it's a great question. So Alex asked, or kind of high level, are there any difference in completion rates or drop-offs really from using these response clarity and conversational feedback tools? The data most recently that I heard earlier this week is Qualtrics is saying that there's zero, it's minimal at anything from a drop-off perspective. So they're not seeing any fewer completes, but they are seeing about 40+% more characters in their comments. So with very little, if any, drop off of the survey, we're seeing about almost a 50% increase in response that they're giving. So quite a significant change and benefit from not really losing any on drop offs. Great question. Yeah, how the reporting works is it does add a new column of data in your data set, Carlos. So ultimately, when these new questions are asked, there are new columns that are reportable just like the initial question. They're just a new column of data in the data set that you can export and view and tag to dashboards and all the above.
And Preston, maybe with some of these, it'd be helpful just to read, just so, 'cause I don't know if everyone has the ability to see these. So next one's from Terry, just says, if you send them to another site via a link, how do you get back to the survey?
Yeah, good question. I'm assuming this is referring to like a reroute or a redirect. So is this like maybe some more context on this if it's a redirect, like after the survey has been completed, or if they are clicking on a link that navigates them and opens up a tab in a new browser. So maybe some more context on this one might help me answer that a little more clearly.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out. Terry, if you're still
Yeah.
on, we'd love to get a little bit more follow-up there from you. Here's the next one. Can we tie this to customer data to further customize the experience? So if they're tied to a case for a customer service and the survey was triggered by an event, so maybe like tying this to metadata.
Absolutely. Yeah. So depending on how distribution of the survey works and where you're tracking sales data, if it's online, the system that's triggering the survey to be sent. Same with, uploading a manual list into Qualtrics with certain metadata fields. We can absolutely have information like if they are a, tiered member or a tiered customer, we can absolutely add metadata to those responses to further enrich that data.
Great. Next question. Can you talk more about the closed loop automation feature, and is this available in existing Qualtrics licenses?
Yeah, the last piece of tech that I showed was that text IQ sentiment. And for most all CX licenses, historical up to now, do have Qualtrics ticketing. So the closed loop configuration is, in other words, is used for ticketing in Qualtrics lingo. So absolutely, most should have it. If you go into your workflows and create a workflow and look for a task for ticketing, that is the closed loop follow-up.
Perfect. Okay, the next question, is the AI tool available for analyzing answers written in different languages? If so, which languages?
Yeah, good question. There are some default languages, so it doesn't work with all languages, some of those AI features, but most of the major languages it does. There is a list in the Qualtrics documentation. I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are, I think, a list of 4 or 5 different languages that these AI features do work with the prompts.
All right. Great. And we'll work on getting an answer for you on the list. So we'll see if we can grab a link for you. All right. Next question. Will the data from conversational feedback be embedded onto its own question ID? Can it be added onto the previous question?
Yeah, great question. So it is a separate question from the kind of the data side. So again, another kind of column in the data. Now, there are ways to concatenate responses. So the prompt is the same. When it asks the additional question, it's a different column, but you can do a concatenation in data and analysis that could concatenate first response and second response into one and use that as a single field in reporting.
Good. This is a good one. I think this one maybe, Alicia, might be up your alley. How do you make execs comfortable with this? Are there certain parameters around what the AI prompts are, et cetera?
Yes. Here we go. For the first part of that question, how do we make executives more comfortable with this? Honestly, and I don't mean to be too tongue-in-cheek about this one, but I would be asking almost the opposite question, right? Every leader I've talked to the past couple of years is just accelerating their obsessiveness with AI and how it's changing the world and how it can lead to better outcomes for their business. So I would say honestly that you elevating this up to your leadership, they'd be like, yes, thank you. This is what we want to see coming from you. But if there is like true hesitancy, I think there are a lot of use cases that could be found through searching on the internet of how businesses have leveraged AI in general to drive their business. And then in this case, an example, like Preston mentioned, this is driving 40% increase in characters. So that, that's a true statistics that you could share with your leadership to comfort them that this is going to lead to more insights.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right, we're a school system and only use one open-ended character limited comment section to families and staff at the end of our survey. Can you also set character limits on the follow-up question? So Preston, probably directed to you on that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually don't know if there's character limits on the follow-up questions that we can have. That is definitely something I can look into. I don't think I've noticed anything from a configuration and documentation standpoint, but certainly can follow up and see if there's a character limit on follow-up questions.
All right. Are there other use cases for the text sentiment topic in the survey flow outside of the direct to inside of the direct to a different branch of questions?
Yeah, for just creating additional metadata fields for filtering and dashboards. So by kind of creating those topics and these topic sentiment for those items, some of those things can also be done on the back end in Text IQ within dashboards and reports. But those can also be, variables that exist on the response. So if you're an organization that is exporting your raw data out of Qualtrics and into your own data lake, then or your CRM, you can definitely push data back to a contact in Salesforce based on their sentiment of their comments. So various things that you can do. There's a lot of options. Really, you can tie it to any workflow in Qualtrics. But those are some initial thoughts off the top of my head on some use cases.
Okay. This next one's a good one. I think it'll be helpful. Probably a lot of people are wondering this. Can you show us, or maybe, in this case, Preston, at least just explain how the data spits out in Excel? So as in, would each AI follow-up question present every single question in its own column? So would we see your tent is out of stock, tell us more, versus your water bottle is out of stock, versus your shirt is out of stock? Just saying that could be quite cumbersome. So how does the data ultimately get visualized?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my screen again and show you in data and analysis what this kind of looks like here. So I have an example right here pulled up. So sharing this. So we can see this was the answer to the initial question. And then this tells us there's 2 additional columns it adds per follow-up question that it creates. What the initial question was, so what the follow-up question was itself, and then what the answer to that follow-up question was. So this is kind of what the data looks like on the back end. Again, a column for the question that the follow-up question that was asked, and then the answer to that follow-up question as a column. And then it would do follow-up question 2, question, follow-up 2, answer.
Great. This next one's a good one, and there's a couple of kind of answers to it. So, are analyzed responses retained on Qualtrics servers? What security measures are implemented? Some open-ended question responses may contain sensitive information. So, this is true. So, to highlight, Qualtrics takes security and data security very, very seriously. Qualtrics is ISO certified, SOC 2 compliant, has many layers of data security. With that said, there's instances where, maybe you want to redact some data from an open-ended comment or something like that. That is something that our custom engineering team helps with regularly. It's a little bit of JavaScript that can be applied on the back end. And so we'll shortly kind of get to that, but that's something that our team, if beyond Qualtrics' standard data security measures that they take and if you need something beyond that, that's something we'd be happy to chat with you about and see how we might be able to help on that. All right. Next question. Is there a limit to the number of AI questions? Not follow-up, but just questions.
Yeah, there's not a limit to how many open questions you can have. There isn't a limit to the initial prompt with response clarity, but there is a conversational feedback limit. So there is a total of 2 per open-ended response, but I believe you can only do it with 2 open-ended questions. So a total of 4 potential follow-up questions that are applied to 2 open-ended questions.
Does the initial text question have to be required? Can they still skip the text entry, or will that trigger the follow-up as we?
They can skip the question.
Have you been able to add the follow-up questions to alerts?
I don't think I've ever tried. That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. This might be a topic for a future meeting, but will there be an AI function for cleaning up the data that is provided? So there's currently nothing in Qualtrics for the AI data cleaning, but this is actually something that we could also work with you on. So we'll provide some contact information afterwards. This is work that our kind of AI specialist and engineering team can help with, is kind of some of that data cleaning techniques. All right. Are conversational responses in another language automatically translated in the data set?
So all recorded responses in different languages aren't automatically recorded. There is a setting in Qualtrics that you go into data and analysis and you translate all the comments. So that's where you'd go. It doesn't do it automatically, but it can translate them.
Okay, good. So we've got Terry's follow-up here. So coming back to the initial question, if you send them to another site via a link, how do you get back to the survey? The follow-up is it opens a tab in a new browser, and then there was a final question on the survey. I couldn't get back from the website, so we're playing with survey design now. So if we've redirected them, they've clicked on a link, they've left the survey in a new tab, how do we help ensure they get back to the survey?
Yeah, really the only way, once they're rerouted somewhere, it's up to them to kind of click back on the original tab to go back into the survey. Typically for kind of best practices, it's best to route them once the survey has been fully completed. Otherwise, there's really no way once they're on a different website entirely to route them back to Qualtrics. So we would want to kind of look at the setup and typically that's done once all questions have been answered.
Great. Here's the next question. Is it possible to pipe in the concatenated follow-up question responses into a workflow email?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, in a workflow email, you can just pipe in the answer to the initial question and the answer to the, you should be able to do it at the follow-up question as well. I might have to double check if that becomes available once the survey is fully complete, if we have access to those before data and analysis records it. But that's a great question. I believe the answer is yes, but I might have to verify.
Okay. Next question. Is there more control over the AI follow-up questions? Can you see examples it might suggest before launching the survey, or does it work completely on the fly? How would we know the answer choices it provides are relevant to the brand, i.e., storeroom stock versus signage, various sizes, etc., and would be confusing to survey takers?
It's a good question. There's not too much customization yet on some of those follow-up questions. From the prompts, we do have the ability to add our custom prompts that we may want to have into there. But from the follow-up question perspective, it is kind of taking its own route to generate those. The only thing it allows us to do is not ask follow-up questions based on the comment being tagged to like a certain topic of feedback.
Great. Next question. Can we add prompts to options where users select others in response choice, and if in other, they mention very vague responses?
To my knowledge, no. You can't add those. It's only for text entry questions. Something that you can do though is, and I've done it in the past, is if they select other, you can use display logic on a follow-up question that uses what's called in-page logic. So if you use in-page display logic and search that in Google, it should pop up with like the first thing. But it's the ability as soon as they select other, an other box will appear that technically is a text entry question that you'd be able to use with that follow-up and response clarity AI tools in there. But the other option is text entry inside of like a multiple choice question is not compatible.
Right. Okay. I think most of the rest of the questions remaining were addressed in some way, shape, or form, with the exception of this one, which is a good segue. So, is there additional training offered for any of the functionality that we went through in Qualtrics? So, the answer is yes. Qualtrics does have the online library and resources. You can also always reach out to Qualtrics technical support. They can help assist you with the new functionality. If you found that you don't have that new functionality yet enabled on your license, that's a good conversation to take to either your Qualtrics account executive or customer success manager. With that said, if you'll go to the next slide, Brooklyn. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So just as a quick reminder, the next kind of part of this series is going to be the analytics of the data. So having that confidence, leveraging AI. So we're going to be diving a little bit more into the text analytics. We kind of went into that in the Q&A today, but we're going to hit that in a little bit more detail, how we can leverage AI for some of those things. And then if we could go one more slide forward. Just want to let everyone know about, if some of the things we've talked about today are interesting and you're sitting there saying, great, but maybe this feels a little bit overwhelming. My team is limited on bandwidth, or we just love to have some additional expertise. We'd love to have a conversation with Alicia on some of the strategy on how we can optimize our surveys, maybe get better data out of the questions, or watching precedent action, kind of saying, hey, it'd be great to have an expert like that, to either do some training with our team or to help kind of be an extension of our team that we can help do work. We have various levels of these success packages. And so, another one of the questions is, will this deck go out? Yes, we'll make sure everyone gets this deck, but we have several levels of these success packages really meant to kind of meet you with the level of support you're looking for. So we've got, pretty small basics packages over on level 1, where you're going to get that dedicated consultant, someone like Preston or someone from his team who you can have that one-to-one relationship with. And again, they can either do trainings or do hands-on keyboard work for you in the Qualtrics platform. Even at this level 1, we provide an annual review. So Alicia or someone from that advisory team will sit down with you and take a look at how things are going in your program and do some strategy with you. And we make it really simple and easy for you to add the amount of time that you want with our team members. Leveling up into levels 2 and 3, you can see we kind of lean in with a little bit more of the technical analysis and data strategy behind what you're doing with your program. We'll do a maturity assessment to kind of get in more detail and give you really concrete areas where we think you can go and enhance your program. And in that level 3, this is for folks that really just want to work with the most senior and capable people that we have. You can lean into this level 3 package. It comes with more time with our team members. It comes with access to our senior most team members. And in addition, you're going to get that quarterly executive advisory panel. So we'll do that meeting over Zoom, and then it comes with an annual executive summary report where we will analyze your program. We'll look at what's going well. We'll make some recommendations on some areas where we might be able to make some improvement, enhance for the future. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up for the day. We appreciate all of you. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or if you would like to have some more, discussions about how Red Pepper might be able to support you in your Qualtrics program. And otherwise, we will see you next time. Thanks all.